What happened to the nickel cigars? If you ask the average person off the street, where do cigars come from? They will probably point you towards Cuba. Good try, but they actually were originally created by the Mayan civilization in Central and South America. The name cigar possibly derives from the Mayan word sica, meaning to smoke rolled tobacco leaves. Central American Mayans, from Guatemala or the Mexican Yucatan, in or before the 10th century, were the first to use tobacco, in the form of a rudimentary cigar. Images on pottery from the time show the Mayan tobacco might have been rolled, not too tightly, in a corn husk or some sort of leaf. What we would call the filler, is thought to have been so strong, that it caused hallucinations. The Mayans took tobacco with them when they migrated in later centuries as far north as Canada and south to Chile. What is unclear, is whether they took their rustic cigars across the Caribbean to the islands. Very likely, there was Mayan-introduced tobacco, used in Hispaniola, today's Haiti and Dominican Republic, and Cuba, as in other parts of the hemisphere. What we do know is that by 1492, when Christopher Columbus reached the islands, cigars were being smoked by the natives. This rolled, leafy discovery, was made by a couple of Columbus's sailors pegged at October 12, 1492, in Cuba. The Taino natives were reported to have been smoking a cigar made of dried tobacco leaves wrapped in palm or plantain leaves. When Columbus and other explorers took tobacco back to Europe, smoking the leaf became immensely popular. Spain opened cigar factories in Cuba and limited international exportation. A majority of the product was sent home, where it was taking hold in the upper class of Spanish society. This, along with its manufacturing, in other European countries, this is where the cigar became more refined and wrapped in tobacco leaves, instead of other plants, and gained tremendous monetary value as a crop. Tobacco was specifically suited for production in its faraway Caribbean and South American colonies. The first U.S. tobacco, that was of a quality high enough for cigars, was originally grown in Windsor, Connecticut, around 1640. For nearly 3 centuries, pipe and cigar tobacco soared in popularity in Europe. But what made tobacco, and especially Cuban cigars, a worldwide phenomenon occurred in 1762 during the Anglo-Spanish War. England, always at odds with Spain as a world power back in the day, captured Havana for 9 months. While occupied, more international shipping went through Cuba, in that time frame, than in the more than 2 centuries, that Spain controlled the Pearl of the Antilles. The world was introduced to the Cuban cigar. Spain regained control through a treaty, but the secret of the Cuban cigar was out. The legend was born. In England, cigars became more popular than pipe tobacco. The Connecticut wrapper we know and love today began when an English officer, who lived near Hartford and participated in the siege of Havana, returned to his home in Connecticut with about 30,000 cigars and enough Cuban seed that would, over time, adapt to the different climate. In 1804, with the demand for Havanas growing worldwide, Cuba imported more than £1 million of the American leaf, much of it, Connecticut wrapper and binder. In 1860, there were nearly 1,500 cigar factories in the U.S. During that time life in Cuba was far from paradise. There were constant uprisings against its Spanish occupation. One particular disagreement, the so-called 10 Years' War, began in 1868 as a rebellion led by sugar and tobacco growers. The instability caused Vicente Martinez Ybor to move his Príncipe de Gales, Prince of Wales, operation from Havana, to Key West, and later, 1885, to what became Ybor City, in Greater Tampa, Florida. Huge factories, of scores of cigar rollers sat at rolling tables, including, my wife's grandmother Mildred Leonard, worked to keep the Tampa gold flowing. Other teams of men, brought stacks of dried tobacco leaves from the basement, to keep the process moving smoothly. Local output peaked in 1929, when workers in Ybor City and West Tampa rolled over 500 million clear Havana cigars, earning the town the nickname cigar capital of the world. Soon, other factories followed and the area became known as Cigar City. By 1890, The number of cigar factories in Florida, as well as other states, had grown to an estimated 3,500. Further conflicts in Cuba, including the Spanish-American War, continued to make the U.S. a better place for the cigar business. The biggest year for U.S. cigar production was 1920, even with alcohol prohibition in effect. 8 billion cigars were made. The previous year had seen the introduction of the first automated short filler cigar machine. Not long after, more than 4,000 machines were in operation, increasing productivity by more than 300% of what were, until then, cigars made only by hand. That boom would go bust, with the advent of the Great Depression in 1929. The nickel cigar became the industry standard, as personal incomes fell. Americans could no longer afford Cuban cigars that sold for 35 cents to $2 each. The Cuban Revolution in 1959, and the nationalization of the cigar market, put a stranglehold on the local Cuban cigar production. While, in 1961, the Cohiba brand was created as a favorite cigar for VIPs and even rumored to be smoked by Castro himself. But, in 1962 the United States imposed sanctions on the tiny Caribbean nation. Over two-thirds of the Cohiba market was crushed. Farmers and other tobacco growers escaped the island with seeds and plants, able to start plantations on neighboring islands. The Monte Cristo brand was newly christened as Monte Cruz in the Canary Islands. In Jamaica, General Cigar Company nurtured the Macanudo brand into prominence. The Dominican Republic, Honduras, Mexico, then Nicaragua all welcomed Cuban cigar masters and witnessed brands like Partagas, Punch, H. Upmann, Hoyo de Monterrey and others, reborn as non-Cuban versions, which soon became available in the U.S. The low labor cost and abundance of land caused the decline of American-made premium, hand-rolled cigars. Cigars languished in the U.S. until 1992, when America was finally coming out of a recession and armed with copious amounts of disposable income, plus the creation of the Cigar Aficionado magazine, which is credited with the resurgence of the American cigar. A lot of the price you pay for a cigar today comes from remarkably high taxes on tobacco products as well as cigars, and the nickel cigar is no more. Of course, a nickel ain't what it used to be either. A premium cigar today runs an average of nearly $8, but there are some great ones available for less. Thanks for watching, please subscribe. And hit the bell, so you'll know when we have new content.